Hey everyone, welcome to Wowcast. Today we're going to talk about The War Within, which alpha starts soon. I have two special guests with me today. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Ian, Game Director on WoW.
I'm Tina, Associate Art Director on WoW.
Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Before we talk about alpha, what can you summarize about The War Within, Ian?
Well, so The War Within, of course, it is the 10th expansion to well-known video game World of Warcraft. But even, I think, more special to us, it's the beginning of the World Soul Saga. It's the beginning of probably the most ambitious story we've ever tried to tell.
I gotta give them a lot of credit for this World Stone Saga idea. 3 expansions tied together telling one story. It's huge, it's ambitious, and if it falls flat anywhere within parts 1 and 2, part 3 is really not gonna be well received. So they have a lot on their shoulders to make this work. They have to give enough content within each expansion to make it feel like a real expansion, but also make it feel like part of the whole. This is big. You can kind of think, I would say, you had Legion, right? And then you had Legion tie right into BFA. But I don't know if I'd call it a saga, but how there was that loose connection with Sargeras plunging the sword in, and then the sword damaging Azeroth and the Azerite coming to the surface and the fight for the Azerite. It's slowly tied in, and then you have Sylvanas who's doing all this, so Jailer, because reasons. And again, that's kind of like a saga in itself, but it fell flat. It fell flat in a lot of areas. BFA didn't really jump off the map like it wanted to, and Shadowlands was not well received for many reasons. For the story being one, and for Zoval, the Jailer, being a terrible endgame boss.
WoW. So as all expansions do, it kicks off with a journey to a new place. But really, this is going to be beginning to set the stage and establish the stakes for a conflict that threatens not just, ourselves.
So if you haven't seen the, I think it's the Legendary Collection, they call it, that you can get off the Blizzard store, that statue sitting between Ian and Bethany, I think her name was Bethany, that statue there is part of that collection. So if you like and you want it, you can get it.
Ourselves and our families and those we hold dear, but the very world that we call home, the very world beneath our feet that's been home to all of our adventures. And if we don't win this one, nothing else matters.
So this character has been everywhere for The War Within. Xal'atath. She's purple, she's amazing. Can you tell us more about her?
Yeah, Xal'atath is, one of our key villains of the World Soul Saga.
I think it's so awesome that they took a popular Legion artifact and took the character that was within the blade and made the future bad guy. I think this is how you build lore organically. I think this is what you should be doing if you want to create characters. Like Illidan was a great character. Everybody loved Illidan, but that goes way back into Warcraft 3. We haven't done a great job of building new characters. Like even Khadgar is old. Jaina, old. Anduin. Anduin's been hit or miss with the way they've developed his character. Genn Greymane. Genn is not a well-developed character. Speaking mostly on the Alliance side, because that's usually what I play as Alliance, we need a character that's well-developed. So Xal'atath, I know they're playing with her in Season of Discovery. She's making some changes to the world, and our history was affected during Legion. And here she is now. And then that ties into Iridikron. I think Iridikron is probably going to be the boss, the final boss. If I had to guess, Iridikron will be the final boss of The War Within. If not the final boss, it will be a raid boss, for sure.
The expansion is, part of it is this journey, delving deeper, find Xal'atath and her allies. And the inspiration for her design from an art side was really based on the priest artifact weapon that she had been trapped in for so long. So if you look at her armor, all the motifs of her belt, her shoulders, really take inspiration from that design. Even the runes on her cheeks, those are a homage to N'Zoth, who freed her from the dagger.
Nice.
So if later on in War Within you find yourself, wiping to a raid somewhere, just blame the Shadow Priests for not just putting the knife down, walk away from the talking dagger, and we wouldn't be here.
You can't walk away from the talking dagger.
Are there any other familiar faces that we can recognize?
Yeah, some of the key heroes of our story are Illyria and Anduin. So
again, Illyria is another one of those characters from the past that maybe we haven't used properly, and it's time to flesh her out, because I think Sylvanas' time is done. So let's put another Windrunner to the front.
These two, they're running a bit, right, from some of the wounds of their past, but
So running away from the wounds of their past, like that's a big one. And honestly, that's part of the reason why I'm coming back. I want to see a good story for Anduin. I want to be disappointed, severely disappointed if Anduin's story isn't good. This is one I'm really looking forward to.
But in the end, they're going to find hope and redemption. So, Illyria, we've seen her new design that really reflects the duality of her character. And Anduin,
Like it's got the voice.
we saw him in our cinematic, and he just looks, a little more haggard. He's been through a lot lately.
He grows beard.
He's been in some stuff.
Yeah,
Working on it.
Yeah, I mean, the name The War Within is one that has a couple of layers to it. Right? Obviously, we're literally delving beneath the surface of Azeroth and going to be battling within our world. But this is also a story that involves a lot of inner turmoil and inner conflict. And Anduin,
Those are two things I really wanted to hear him say. I like the idea of the War Within, going under the ground, doing all that stuff, but I want to have the inner conflict resolved. Or if not resolved, I want it touched on. I want Anduin to grow as a character and have more depth, and I want this to be the place where he becomes the king that the Alliance needs.
is probably the most torn of any of our cast of heroes, given what he went through in the Shadowlands. And his journey into the darkness as he seeks to rediscover his own light is a big part of the narrative arc.
And with the War Within, there's new zones. Can we talk about what our new zones are going to be?
The continent as a whole that begins on the surface and extends beneath the earth, right, we're calling Khazalgar. This is an ancient home to the Earthen. It's actually just off the west coast of Pandaria, about between Pandaria and Kalimdor, just a couple hundred nautical miles away from a certain sword that's sticking out of the southern end of Kalimdor. But yes, home to 4 zones with amazing, varied settings.
Yeah, so our first zone, the Isle of Dorn. This is basically, you'll find an isolated group of Earthen there. And so they have their awesome city, Dornogal, which we're very excited.
I like the fact that even though we're going to be doing a lot of underground stuff, we're starting on the surface. It makes more sense to start on the surface than to just suddenly go underground. So we need that starting point.
For players to check out, that'll be the hub in the end. The second zone is the Ringing Deeps. So, the evocative of like mine picks, industry. And so this is the heart of earthen industry. But it's not all just, lava and fire. It's mixed with these beautiful caverns, cenotes with light and water coming in, creating these, lush spaces for the players to enjoy. And then we go to Halifal. Halifal is where we really wanted to break expectations.
So I've got to say that the design team and building these zones, top notch. You've got a lot of work to make something that's almost completely underground or supposed to be underground look good and not just look like a bunch of caves, right? We had some underground stuff in Cataclysm, and it all just kind of looked the same. It was very boring, very dark, very bland. This is not. This is lush, it's green, it's vibrant. You've got like bioluminescence on different plants floating around, and got a giant crystal just shooting out of the top there. So you're in something. So I think this is a really good shot.
I like this one. This is Arathi airships.
Right, underground airships, right? It's the first thing you naturally think of when you're going under the surface. How are they going to get around? Well, airships, of course.
Of course.
And then our final zone is Azj-Kahet. So this is the heart of the Nerubian Empire. This is where we'll finally be able to see the Nerubians in all of their strength and glory, like with the height of their civilization.
I know there was a lot of talk about having the Nerubians being used way earlier in WoW. There's rumors that I'm not sure if they're true or not, that the Nerubians are going to have an entire underground zone in Wrath of the Lich King. Like there was so much more that they developed and they built, but then due to time, budgets, constraints, they cut it all back and it was just 2 dungeons. So it's nice to see this all kind of getting fleshed out, and it'd be an internal thing, I suppose, that we may never know about, but I'd like to know the difference between what the Nerubians are now, what they're doing now, and what that original intent was.
I think we'll get into the details of Alpha later, but everyone's journey is going to start in the Isle of Dorn. But I really can't wait until we get to Halifal in our testing. And I think Tina mentioned that this crystal It is such a striking visual element that dominates the zone. Imagine this place
really
deep
cool.
within the earth, a radiant crystal of light, and the way, as it illuminates the surroundings, that actually plays with the environment and some of the spawns and how the world around it reacts to it.
So having that crystal coming out like that, I wonder if maybe in a future patch, we're going to have another zone that we'll go into, or maybe even a future expansion, we might go back underground, and we're going to see the rest of the sword underground from the underside perspective, and we're going to see maybe what it punctured or how far it went. I think that would be an interesting perspective and a neat look at it, that we start here and here's a crystal, and that's the first thing I think. I was like, if I'm seeing this crystal coming out from underneath or above me into this giant cavernous area, what about the sword? Can we see where that goes?
I think when we set out to create this underground space, we knew that one of the risks was that it could feel oppressive, that people didn't want to feel the sense of claustrophobia, of you're always in caves. Halifal really from the outset was built to be a place where, honestly, unless you fly all the way up to check out the ceiling above you, it doesn't feel underground. It feels like you could be outdoors in some vast, welcoming area it's incredibly epic.
I like that idea.
When we
I like
arrive to the Isle of Dorn, what's the first thing we'll see?
Well, so you're going to see something a bit different in Alpha from when the expansion goes live. There is an expansion intro experience that is not currently being tested. It's something that has some, cool narrative elements that we want players to all experience together later in the year when War Within launches. But players will spawn in the Alpha on the Isle of Dorn, surrounded by some debris that will look pretty familiar and pretty distinctive, and really is the scar.
I'm pretty certain Dalaran gets destroyed. In fact, I think a couple other YouTubers have already said that that's what happens. Dalaran's gone.
Of an initial battle that seems like it didn't end so well.
The jury's still out on
and
whether or
the
not
beginning
Khadgar is
of our
gone.
journey, as with many expansions, is a bit of a mystery, a bit of an investigation of arriving in a strange land, having this threat that we face, these visions, these whispers that heroes around Azeroth have been hearing in recent months, but trying to understand the nature of the threat we face, how we're going to stop it. And whenever we figure out where we're going, what the next natural location is, what the story elements are, the first question we ask is, who needs to be here? Who does it make sense to have answer this call, want to step forward? Just as when we were dealing with, the Green Dragonflight or the Emerald Dream or the like, okay, this is time for Malfurion and Tyrande to step forward.
I imagine this is a tough call for them, and it's one they really have to tread carefully on. But it's true. Not every character needs to be in every expansion. I think we got overloaded on Khadgar for a little while, but then he stepped back. But then it was weird because after he stepped back, though, it felt like there was a vacuum because we're, as players, so used to him guiding us along our path. He guided us through Legion. He guided us through WoD. And then you get to BFA, and he's kind of chilling on the back burner. And then he shows up a little bit here in Dragonflight. So I think it's important to make sure that you utilize current characters the right way. But then, and maybe he'll talk about this here, bringing the right characters to light and making them more prominent, like Anduin, like Illyria, and then making new characters that stick, like Xal'atath.
Now that we're going to this ancestral homeland of the Earthen with this ancient connection to the dwarven legacy of Azeroth, this is a time for our dwarves to take center stage.
All right, so let's talk about the 8 new dungeons in the War Within. What are your guys' favorites or the notable ones you want to talk about?
Well, so one that's fun to talk about is actually probably the first dungeon the players are going to see in their journeys, and it's going to be tested early on in the alpha. This is the Rookery dungeon in the Isle of Dorn. The Rookery is the place where the Storm Griffins were raised and trained by the ancient Earthen over.
So the Storm Griffins are going to be a huge thing in this game. Kind of neat. You can buy one early if you're willing to spend the 89 USD for the epic version, and get your Storm Drake now, or Stormbird now.
Over the centuries, dwarves and griffins go hand in hand, and the Earthen have a legacy of storm riders that we got to see a little sneak peek of. If you got the War Within Heroic Edition, you might have been flying around on that guy. There's plenty more where that came from in the Isle of Dorn. And this dungeon, of course, is not all peaceful. It's been overrun by a group of corrupted Earthen known as the Skarden. and we're going to be on just beginning to.
I'm not sure how I feel about that character. It's interesting. I like the animations. I like the glowiness. I think they're doing really good with animations recently. And this is alpha, so things will get tightened up obviously before release. But those horns they literally look like someone just clicked and stuck them right on. Not the cleanest look, but if they clean this up and tighten it up, this could be a really cool character model.
Understand where they came from and what their nature is as we fight through it. But one cool thing about this dungeon is that it's actually part of the main campaign as you play through Isle of Dorn. Now, I know some people are instantly saying, wait a minute, I don't like doing dungeons, I just like solo questing, that's terrible. Well, fortunately, in 10.2.5, towards the end of Dragonflight, we introduced this feature called Follower Dungeons. And we're really happy to bring that to the level up dungeons in War Within right from the outset, so that you can go in solo with NPC allies as you play through the dungeon if that's what you prefer. Or
I think follower dungeons are a great idea. I think they definitely need to be tuned a little bit. And I think your followers, the AI, I think there needs to be a baseline item level that they should be at. They shouldn't be any lower than a certain level. But when you start being higher than the traditional item level for your level, they need to match you. For example, in Dragonflight right now, this is pre-season 4. So if you're 420, 450, 460 in any of those zones, I think the AI needs to have that same item level, because the dungeons really get drawn out because your other characters just can't pull their weight the same way. And typically, if you're at a 450 plus item level, you're not going to be doing follower dungeons. But if it's something we need to do for the story, I would like to not have it feel like a slog. It's okay to learn in the dungeon. It's okay to take your time in the dungeon. But I think the time that it takes in a dungeon should be based on the player and the player's output, not the AI's ability to burn down trash mobs.
of course, you can just queue up with friends or random group mates through the group finder. But what this lets us do is, where appropriate, we can really have the story flow directly through dungeons in a way that we couldn't in the past, and in ways that at times was frankly awkward, because sometimes major villains die in dungeons. Dungeons are places of great importance in a zone, but we couldn't really tie them directly into the questing because we didn't want to create an obstacle for players who really just prefer to keep playing solo.
Tina, is there anything that you like?
One of my favorites is in Hallowfall. So it's called the Priory of the Sacred Flame, and it's this Earthor monastery. So one of the coolest parts is the final boss room. There's this giant window that frames the crystal that is embedded in the ceiling of Hallowfall. And so I love, the beauty of the room, as well as just how it ties in with the narrative of the story as a whole. And another really cool one, it's the City of Threads. So this one is underneath the Nerubian city proper. And so it's really interesting to see the ancient civilization that the newer civilization was built on top of. And just to think about the layers of Nerubian history that, is in this land.
They're not going to be prominent dungeon fodder, right? Wrath had 2 Nerubian dungeons. We're not going to have a bunch here when they could have just cashed out and just done a whole bunch of Nerubian things, and they're not. So that content diversity when it comes to dungeons is important, especially when you're running it for your 50th and 60th time.
Land.
Is it that the ancient civilization back in Lich King?
Even far before that.
It's even farther before that?
Yeah, the Nerubians, I think, we might think of them as monstrous or arachnid. They're one of the great powers, one of the great advanced civilizations of Azeroth. Right, up there with the elves and trolls and the others that helped shape the course of the world's history. We've only really seen hints of them, going back to Wrath. If you ran the Azjol Nerub or Ahn'kahet dungeons, you could see their buildings off in the background. But they were a civilization that at its height rivaled the High Elves and the Nightborn on the surface.
That's insane.
They were able to go toe-to-toe with the Lich King's armies and win until the Old Gods and their forces on another flank eventually led to the Nerubians being overwhelmed. But really being able to explore what they're all about is one of the things we're most excited about when it comes to War Within.
One of the things we're excited to bring is an arachnophobia filter, if you will. For all of you out there who could never, go to that spider section in Nax, you'll be able to turn on arachnophobia filter and all spider beasts will turn into crabs. So very pumped about that.
Yeah, it actually.
So we need a video with the crab rave in the War Within. It's got to happen. Got to happen. I think this is neat. I don't have arachnophobia. I'm not afraid of spiders, but this is neat. And I think the crabs are actually kind of cool looking.
Actually looks it works way better than you might think just hearing that sentence. I can't wait for players to be able to jump in, turn it on, and
Fight crabs.
hopefully feel more comfortable in parts of our world. This is something that when we announced the Nerubian-centric themes of War Within at BlizzCon, we heard trepidation from portions of our community who love WoW, but were worried they weren't going to be able to experience it. Honestly, prior to that, it's something we heard concerns about from within our own team, where there are, people who genuinely felt uncomfortable with these elements of the game that we were building together. And so we set out to try to find a solution that would still, preserve the fidelity of the game, but really make it more approachable, more accessible to everyone.
So speaking of the Nerubians, once we reach level 80, we're going to go to the new raid, Nerbo Palace. Is there anything you want to speak about that?
Yeah, this raid is epic in so many ways. One of the coolest parts is there's this beautiful showpiece that is just in front of the Queen's Palace. It represents the Nerubian race, and it just shows how highly Queen Ansurek thinks of her people and herself. This raid, you'll get one of the sections of the raid, you'll get to check out her innermost sanctum. This is where, only VIPs for the Nerubians get to go, and you really get to explore the dark elegance of her palace.
Again, as we were just saying, the Nerubians,
it's good to see so many different.
Remember, they're an advanced race, very, this epic civilization. I think there's some parallels probably to going back to the Nightborn in Suramar and what going into that city and that palace felt like. We really want to show the sophistication here. This is not a monstrous supervillain lair. This is, a superpower of Azeroth that we find ourselves, facing off against. But yeah, the Queen Ansurek encounter that Tina mentioned, she's going to be the end boss of sort of the initial season, the initial raid tier.
There we
go. The encounter team is hard at work on this one. I can't wait to see it tested later on in beta. This is, the whole room is really purpose-built to showcase some vertical elements, and it's just an incredible set piece. But we want to.
I do hope though, with time, just because the Nerubians are like the first season, and we defeat the Queen, I don't want that to be the end. I feel sometimes we do that in games, especially games like this that are live. We'll have we'll have an idea. We'll go and we'll go and we'll go and we'll build it up, and we'll build it up throughout the leveling process. And then we get to the raid, and then it's done and it's over. And we've still got the rest of the expansion. I think it's okay to beat the boss. It's okay to beat their queen. It's okay for some of them to go back with their, licking their wounds, the tail between their leg. But I think there needs to be a counter strike, a counter-surgence from them. I don't think defeating this raid should end it. For such a huge, if they're talking about the civilization being as big and as ancient, as prominent and powerful as it is, I don't think one raid should be the end of it.
As always, integrate the environment wherever possible into our encounters, so you're facing off against both, a very powerful magical user, but also someone who is arachnid in nature. And how do we kind of deliver parts of the fantasy of, scaling a web while locked in combat against the Queen? Those are the things that we're currently exploring. Can't wait to see that up for testing.
Does that mean we're going to get tier sets again?
Certainly. I think last time we tried taking them away, I recall torches and pitchforks in the street. New tier means new tier sets. And these days, unlike years and years ago when you had to raid in order to get the tier set, now you can get them from a wide array of activities, whether you're a raider, Mythic Plus player, or an Outdoor World player, which includes now delves.
Delves. Let's start talking about delves.
This is something
delves are one of the major new features in War Within, and I think we're really excited to offer a more structured, progression-oriented extension of the Outdoor World gameplay that we know is the favorite of so many of our players. And delves are these seamless experiences integrated into all of our zones, where you can have these localized, varied adventures alongside in the first season, Bran Bronzebeard, either on your own or with friends.
I'm interested to see what seamless means. Obviously, it doesn't mean instance. It's like scenarios or dungeons or the Isle things that they had in BFA. I'm wondering if you just literally, you're just walking down a path and there's an area and you meet Braun and you'll like, hey, hero, champion, whatever they're going to call us this time. Let's go through here. I found something we need to look at. And then you just go through, and then it's not really procedurally generated, but like semi-generated and phased for you. So maybe that's the way they're going with this. Either way, I really want to see it.
And finally, get a shot at some endgame epic rewards just through an extension of the Outdoor World ecosystem.
Yeah, we'll be able to get it from the Great Vault, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's super exciting. So one of our goals with building delves was we really wanted the player to just feel like they adventured, came across a place, and could just, go in and see what's inside. When you walk up to the delve, there's this, dark, misty door, and you click on it, and then it just disappears, and you just walk into your own personal delve instance. So very excited about that.
So it is pretty similar to what I said, where you're going to have Braun kind of like there, but he's not there. He doesn't show up until you come to the misty, almost like an Elden Ring curtain you're walking through. And now it's activated. So it is live, it is in the game. It's not instance per se, but I think it is phased, which is fine. Phased is fine. You go in your group, you find it, and you got a Bronzebeard waiting for you.
Players are going to have that first experience on the Isle of Dorn early in the alpha. The first delve they're likely to encounter is Earthcrawl Mines. You're going to encounter your good friend Bran Bronzebeard outside an ancient earthen mine that has been overrun with Nerubians who are burrowing up from the depths. Bran will ask you if you want him to outfit himself as a healer or as a damage dealer to help support you. And you'll venture in and have your very first delve experience. You'll be able to choose whether you want to do it on Tier 1 or Tier 2 difficulty. Tier 1 is kind of the default. This is for everyone experience. Tier 2 is for those who want to opt into a bit more of a challenge because that's what they enjoy. There will be higher tiers that can be unlocked at max level as part of the end game and seasonal progression. And we really just can't wait to get player feedback from the outset, really all through alpha, on this new system, on how it is or isn't working for you, and whether we can really meet everyone's expectations from people who just want a casual romp.
I really think they've been taking some notes from prior expansions. I keep saying the scenarios in MOP and then the Isle expeditions in BFA, right? Like after a point though, you just got to, they either became useless for you or they were mindless grinding. But to create a tier system like this, that could be exciting because then that means you can keep pushing yourself higher and higher, and you don't need a group if that's your content, because not everyone plays this for a group. Sometimes I had friends that really didn't play in the group when we had a huge guild. They just wanted to be able to chat with someone, but they liked doing their own thing because it was their only time they got to relax. And if that's what WoW brought them, then great. And if Delves meets that need for a lot of people where they can do something and it feels value added to their game, to their character, and they don't have to get into a group of people, I'm all for it. And then the tier system is going to be great because they're adding it to the Great Vault, which I think is a great idea. I never thought WoW should ever be a game that's locked behind too much gear like it used to be. When you do that, you start to lose subscribers because it becomes a case of have and have-nots. But with the Great Vault, you've made things more accessible to people. You get at least one piece of gear for doing something throughout the week. And adding the delves to that is just another way to get some gear. And if you're more capable of going higher tier delves than you could, say, dungeons or even go mythic, because some people do not do mythic dungeons. Some people aren't in the, heroic or mythic rating. Maybe this tier 3, tier 4 delve is as high as they're going to go, but it gives comparable item level for their content. I'm not going to say that a high tier delve is equal to a mythic dungeon or mythic raid, but I think it should have some definite value added.
As an extension of their Outdoor World experience to those who want a solo progression challenge that they can really strive to overcome. Feedback is going to really help shape how this evolves, but we're
I
so
think
excited
solo
about
progression
Delves
is
as a
important
central
when you're
part of
leveling anymore because it just the
Yeah, I'm
phasing
excited
just
that we're going to
messes
be able to
things
just
up
jump
again.
in and get, or like go solo with Bran, or you can have friends, but also just get rewards in that way, especially the tier sets with the Catalyst.
Exactly.
And then that really cool mechanical mount.
Yeah, so this is going to kind of be an introduction to sort of the Delves end game. As you hit max level, as you hit 80 and start to get a sense of the Delves ecosystem, right at the start of that, we're going to give you this epic customizable mount, kind of the successor to the customizable drakes you had in Dragon Isles, where you'll be able to, through doing Delves, earn a variety of different customizations and attachments that you can mix and match to really create
And
your
this will be
own
your show-off
personalized
piece.
flight mount.
This will be
So
your
does
new
this
show-off
mechanical
piece to
mount
show
have
you've
dynamic
got the
flight?
unique
This is one of the big questions.
epic delve done, and you've got a special propeller or a special glider attachment or tail wing attachment, which I think is cool. And then all that's going to go into the next expansion. So we'll see who keeps flying them. I think there's a lot of promise in this.
Questions we had moving on from Dragonflight. We have the question of like, well, okay, dragon riding is amazing. We can't get rid of this, but how is this going to work alongside of the hundreds of mounts that we already have in players' collections? And how, from a design perspective, how do we navigate a world where some mounts can fly in this awesome way and others can only do the old quote-unquote static flight? Fortunately, I think our art team was able to work out an amazing solution for us.
Yeah, we were very excited to be
I
able
think it's really
to
great that
make
we
pretty
can
much
do
all
all
mounts be able to
dynamic
dynamically
fly,
fly. So
not dragon
even
fly,
Nimron's head in,
dynamic
we figured it out. We made it work. So
I'm really excited to see Nimron's head going like super fast. Another feature coming in the War Within that I'm really excited about, as well as a lot of other people, is warbands.
Yeah, warbands, I mean, again, I think as I summarized it at BlizzCon, it's just account-wide everything.
Warbands, I think, is a great idea. I'm excited for it. We've had account-wide things for a while, but not to the extent that they're going to start talking about here. And it's going to be great because sometimes it's just easier to go through and grind those old dungeons and get some transmog gear. And I don't know, whenever I'm using a plate wearer to go through, all I get is cloth and leather. And whenever I have my mage or my priest and I'm going through the Tomb of Sargeras, all I'm getting is plate. Now, those aren't lost transmog runs.
Almost everything. Players increasingly play multiple characters. This is something we've heard loud and clear, that the game needs to be more alt-friendly. That players want to be able to choose where they spend their time across their different characters instead of feeling like they have to reprogress everything individually. And so, yeah, the Warband it is your account in its entirety. It is your collection of champions, whether they're Horde or Alliance, regardless of what realm they're on.
I think the
they're all
Warband
part of the
thing
same
is gonna be
Warband,
good.
which gives access to
I've heard it
various
gets
shared
really
progression
expensive.
systems.
You want all
and
the
then you
tabs
get to
unlocked.
see all of your favorites on one screen together. So in our new UI, we'll have warbands, and you'll be able to move
I think this is neat here.
up into that space.
I just hope that you can not just have your top warband things. I hope the whole picture, there's unlocks for that. Maybe you complete certain dungeons and you unlock the zone, or you do, maybe it could be tied to exploration. You complete an entire zone, all its quests, explore every section of it, and boom, you've got a new background for your warband.
And see them all hanging out around a campfire.
Is that on the character select screen?
Yeah, the character select screen.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's going to be totally different than what we're used to logging in.
Exactly. Yes, you'll know like this is a completely different world. It's a completely different welcome into World of
I like it.
Warcraft.
Simple
What we showed off at
quality of life
BlizzCon was just actually a UI mock-up, but we're excited to see people react to the real thing. And really, as with everything else, warbands are a foundation. This is a system that we want to build the next generations of World of Warcraft on. In 2004, WoW launched with everything character-based. In 2024, WoW is going to shift to everything being account-based. And we can't wait to hear feedback about what...
And that's smart on their part. When I started in 2005, I played one character because you didn't have time really to make a lot of alts back then. I played a hunter, was a night elf hunter, still have it, still have my original characters. But that was it. I played just that character through the original, just that character through the Burning Crusade. It wasn't until Wrath that I started to, create more alts, and that's due to other quality of life improvements they did. They're looking for a group for dungeon finders, so you're able to take characters and run them through dungeons over and over and over again. Back then, it was just spamming AOE's to clear dungeons. You had Death Knights, which started at a higher level, which saved you a lot of leveling time, because leveling from 1 to 70 back then it wasn't as streamlined as it is now. Back then it was just, 2, 3 expansions, 4 expansions. When you get to Cataclysm, like that was it. You had these expansions, and you had to go through progressively. Now you were allowed to jump earlier back then. You can go to Outland at 58, and you were able to go so level cap was 60, and then it was 70. So you can go to 68. You were able to go to Wrath, and so on and so forth. Now it's so much more streamlined that you don't even see an entire content in Chromie Time, but that's what we want to do. We want to get to what's happening now. I think we need to create some kind of idea where I don't object to Chromie Time, because it allows me to play things that I enjoyed when I was going through the original time. But I think there needs to be like a concise catch-up type leveling experience where you're just going to level up for the sake of going from start level to new content. And it's like a flashback where you flash back as your character, or you're not flashing back, but it's like a montage. So you're showing your character existed throughout those times, but only was there for certain things. And maybe they weren't the champion that they are now. You have our characters we call Mallwalkers, champions, heroes, blah, 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 blah. Let's take this character, and he's not going to be a champion until new expansion, right? Like, you're a foot soldier for your faction. You're part of, and that bumps you to a certain level, and then you're part of the onslaught onto Outland for Burning Crusade, and then that moves you up, and then maybe you're taking the shore again, like you did. Again, speaking from the Alliance, like you did in Wrath of the Lich King, or maybe you're part of the final push on Icecrown, and then you move on and you show something from Cataclysm, you show something from Mop, you show something from WoD. You show that your character was there, but they weren't the main character throughout all that, and they slowly grown with power and progression. And here they are now. And I think that'd be a great way to show a little bit of everything and get new players up to speed. Like, here is the story, instead of just kind of picking something, playing through it, and then now you're in the War Within. You don't understand why Anduin is sad. You don't understand Thraz's feelings. You don't really know who Ilaria is. You have no clue what the Windrunners are about. Why is everyone going crazy about Xal'atath? You don't know any of this. Maybe you have friends that have told you, like, oh, I love this and I love playing this game, but there's a barrier to entry for new players. And it really is a cohesive leveling story to get to the end game. I don't care once you get to, so we're 70 now. I don't care once you get to 70 and you get in the War Within. But I think from 1 to 70, or a lot of times now you start at 10 to 70, I think there needs to be a cohesive path that you play that gives you, and it's an option. You can still do Chromie Time if you want. You can go and level your entire way up in the Dragon House. Or if you're new, you can go through this new progression thing that shows every little bit of WoW's history, and you're leveling up as you go through it. I think that'd be a great idea.
Other areas we can expand upon here, and that's going to shape not just War Within, but later updates and expansions. And we're just, just excited about this platform that better reflects the way our players are looking to play World of Warcraft today.
You can't forget about PvP. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So we have a new battleground called the Deep Hall. This one is earthen themed. It's a bit of a mashup.
Honest question, how popular is PvP in WoW right now? It's not something I've ever done.
Between Silver Shard Mines and Arathi Basin. So, hold some points, push some carts. We're really excited to see how players navigate around this one.
Yeah, and in terms of how players are interacting with it, there is an overhaul to our rated battleground system that is coming with War Within. People who've been paying attention over the course of Dragonflight have checked out our Battleground Blitz, our kind of brawl that was testing out a 8v8 solo queue rated battleground format. We're happy to move to that as a default.
I wonder if the Plunderstorm idea is going to become a new battleground PvP thing.
for how rated battlegrounds are going to work going forward. I think we're
I mean, not like Plunderstorm is now, obviously, but I think the concept of the giant 50-person battle royale become a new PvP in-game thing. I think Plunderstorm was testing the waters for the future. Because once Plunderstorm is over, it's not like they're going to delete that code forever and never use it again. I think its potential exists.
really excited to make that battleground experience that personally I've always felt is the best part of WoW PvP, the larger scale, more cooperative, objective-based, collaborative, competitive setting, as opposed to the deathmatch style in Arena, to make that more accessible to everyone who, loves battlegrounds, loves PvP. We know, it's a bit overdue, honestly, us adding a new battleground map into the rotation. And we're excited to do more of this going forward. We're excited to have a new framework that can make battlegrounds more central to the end game rewarding part of PvP. And yeah, this is just the beginning of a new chapter.
Another feature in the War Within is hero talents. We've been having a lot of articles talking about them. What are some of the other things that we can expect with the hero talents coming forward?
Well, I can say there can be no more blogs and articles releasing hero talents because they'll be there for you to jump in and play. And I think that's the most exciting thing. We're so grateful to the community for all of the feedback and discussion in recent months, going back to the first blog in December.
I think these hero talents are good from a sense that it's no longer borrowed power. And as we level up, there's only so much you can do. And then you start getting into spell squishing. We already have to start looking at item level squishing again. I think they did that. I think they did an item level squish, and they've done two. Is it two total character level squishes? I can't remember. And then I know they've squished item levels in Cataclysm because things were getting out of hand. Yeah, I think those things need to be looked at.
Remember, this really helped us shape this central feature of how people's class gameplay is going to evolve.
And by doing that, we're allowing them not to have all that extra bloat. Like, these are just cool talents that they add, but they don't make it so crazy. So we can be one of these mixtures on these hero talents, and maybe we expand on that in a future expansion, or maybe hopefully it doesn't just get dropped to the wayside like a lot of things do.
You're going to see hero talents that you haven't yet seen for the trees that we haven't discussed previously. And for many of the ones that we have released, you'll log in and see changes that are directly shaped by your feedback, by what we heard loud and clear in some cases about what was and wasn't exciting. We've committed to have as many of these playable right from the outset as possible. We will have 100% of the hero talent trees available and playable not long into alpha. And then the rest of the journey is going to be about iteration, tuning, and really just dialing it all in to make the polished experience that everyone is excited about.
So what are we doing with professions in the War Within?
I think when we really overhauled professions in Dragonflight, we saw that as a kind of a permanent shift in how professions were going to work going forward. So you can expect, new recipes, different enchants, but the same fundamental sort of progression and
profession progression is hit or miss. If you're not on it early in the expansion, I feel like it's not worth playing catch up, especially if you're past season 2. The cost, the barrier to entry to buying mats and getting up to max profession level and then being viable, it's almost non-existent. So professions, I feel, anymore are hit and miss. And while I like the Dragonflight way of doing things, I like the bonus perks, and I like the idea that you could actually take certain items and you can craft a higher quality item. Then you have an opportunity to craft higher quality items. That reminds me a lot of Star Wars Galaxies, where there were multiple different qualities of different materials, and then you crafted a weapon, and the weapon was of a specific quality. So better quality materials made better quality weapons. I think this is neat. Obviously, we're going to have to limit it within the scope of item levels here in WoW. But if you're not getting on it early, if you're going to sit on the fence on the War Within, you're not going to play till maybe season 2, season 3, or jump in at the end. Professions aren't really your thing. they're just not worth it.
Structure to professions that you saw in
Unless he says
Dragonflight.
something different now.
One big piece of feedback that we heard throughout Dragonflight, though, was a bit of frustration with the work order system from crafters who were just looking to complete quests, looking to skill up, but found themselves competing and often racing to grab work orders with their fellow crafters.
I never really got into the
And so what we're excited to offer is a baseline availability of basically NPC crafting orders. So it could be, Earthen in Isle of Dorn who needs a hammer made or need a helmet made, and they're constantly putting their work orders up.
So maybe this will take away some of the frustration I feel with, joining late or ignoring professions and then not getting into it till later ports. Maybe this will help that problem.
Onto the market, so that there's always something for you to grab. The player ones will still be more lucrative, but there should always be that baseline availability if you just want to skill up, you just want to practice your trade skill. And there's also some cool potential for narrative tie-ins, the ability to have quests that now can point you towards that system because we can count on it always being there.
So with Dragonflight and the profession overhaul, there was also a UI overhaul. Is there anything we're going to see with The War Within?
Yeah, so the UI overhaul, it's basically a continued improvement. So
As much as I feel frustrated at points, leveling an alt, there's no point in leveling your professions right now at this stage of Dragonflight. I will say that the UI is great. And if they're going to expand on that and make it better, then thumbs up. It's really good UI right now. I think it's way more intuitive than it used to be. But that's, we're talking about WoW from the mid 2000s where everything was that kind of rectangular box. The crafting box was just as big as the reputation box, which was just as big as the currency box, which came later in the game, just as big as your character select screen. So all that was at one size, and now they're starting to expand and make things bigger. Now you've got you have your renowned box. I can't think of a better word right now, but the box that he's showing on the UI, that's huge. It's way bigger than that little old reputation, which you can still see the reputation square. And then, making crafting items through professions that way, I think there's a lot of value to that. And hopefully by making it better, I don't know. I feel like if I had to put a weight on how I feel about professions in terms of dislike, right now, 65-35 in favor of, but if you're not at the top edge, you're not missing much.
we want to make over time. One of the things that I'm very excited about is the quest bank overhaul. So we're going to have a bunch of new icons that will make what type of quest it is much more clear. One of the new ones that you'll see is one that's we consider an important one. These aren't campaign, but they're pretty important to your character. For instance, some that must.
So I like the quest, the main storyline ones having the exclamation point with the box around it. I always thought the blue were obviously dailies, repeatables, but if you're colorblind, you can't see that color. Now you got a little more action, and then these are supposed to be important to your character. So I like this. I like this change, and I like the color variation too.
Do ones for your profession, or ones where you're gonna unlock the revival catalyst.
Yeah, I think as we've leaned more and more into outdoor world gameplay and varied gameplay there, different types of public events over the course of Dragonflight, honestly, we reached a point about halfway through Dragonflight where we just took a look at our map and kind of recoiled in horror at the number of different icons that were there. And it was just a kind of icon soup situation that made us say, it's kind of this point, we've advanced far past the world of, you just have some daily quests or world quests here. We need a clearer visual language. And so really excited to just evolve that central interface that players use to log in and see what there is to do in WoW on a given day.
So that covers The War Within, and the alpha is starting extremely soon.
Pretty much working on getting it stood up as we speak, as we sit here right now. And
so I know there are some streamers and YouTubers out there already have played the alpha. The usual suspects there, Mr. GM, Taliesin, Evitel, Bellular. These guys have all gotten their hands on it, gotten to see it. I know Bellular and Taliesin went to London for a big reveal this week. So they're right on schedule. If you consider the roadmap that they had, I would guess the pre-patch with the War Within beta starting probably June, the pre-patch is going to be, I'd say mid-July. maybe early July, but probably mid-July. And then the War Within, we're going to see that hit. It says summer, autumn. I think that's a September release. I think the actual expansion will drop in September. So maybe that pushes the pre-patch to August. So August pre-patch, June Darkheart, 23rd Season 4, and then September is my guess for the War Within coming out. So those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think. What are you excited for in the future of the War Within, of the World of Warcraft? What are you ready to see? What do you want to do? I'm looking forward to Dells. I'm looking forward to Warbands. I'm excited to see the story. So drop something in the comments. Let me know, and I will catch you next time.